Thank you for joining me. My name is Jerrel. I develop games for a living, and it's good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Today we will take a look at Digimon's story, Time Stranger. This is a demo and it was uploaded. I will put the link in the description to the source video, and I suggest you take a look at that video if you are interested in this game. I won't be looking at the entirety of the footage. I will merely be analyzing the first few minutes of this video, and I will be explaining and pointing some things out as a game developer and as an artist. There are things here that I just really appreciate. I've done a couple of other videos on this game as well, and it has really impressed me. Originally, this game was requested to me from one of the viewers at this channel here, and they asked me to take a look at the video. So if you have any requests for me to take a look at other games or topics, do let me know. So there's something about the music that we hear in this town, in this environment, and it reminds me a little bit of traditional Irish tunes, which is something I really enjoy. During the day I develop games, and I usually work until quite late, but a couple days out of the week I will step out of my office and I will spend time doing Irish music sessions like here. Okay, that was fun. I want to take a look at the menu here. Any fan of RPGs will be spending significant amounts of time in game menus, and so they have to be easy to navigate. They have to make sense. I just want to ask you, when was the last time you played a game or an RPG that is quite menu intensive and menu heavy, where you spend a lot of times in menus, and for some reason it's just not organized well, and you end up just having to keep opening the wrong thing over and over again until you find the menu that you're looking for? It's funny, but sometimes in Pokemon games I have that issue where I think I'm looking for the Pokemon's move list and I end up going to the wrong menu multiple times before I eventually open the right one. I don't know why it's like that. Some games are just a little bit sloppy. We can take a look here, and again, let's have a look at the source video. You can click on that in the description, but I quite like the streamlined look of this. Because Digimon is technology based, they can lean into the digital aspect of it. They don't have to make things appear organic. They can lean into the technology, the polygons, you know, these sort of holographic sort of style to the portraits here, which I really like. This means that they can zoom in to the characters so they can show enough expressive detail, but then they can see, you can use this gradient fade, so it looks like there's just a radial blur that's just baked into the image there, so that you don't necessarily have to restrict the character to be just in a square. They're not restricted to being just in the circle. It looks like the hologram is being projected. This is really neat. There's a lot of life and animation to it. You see imperfections when it comes to that hologram where there's some static flickering. Small details like that are really, really neat. The amount of attention to detail in this game is just cool. It's so cool to look at, and I will try to not get too lively here. I want to try to stay on topic, but there are some things where I've sort of stopped paying attention to what I was doing, and I was just admiring the work that they had put into this game because it's so cool. So I'm just going to try to stay on task here. This is your typical skill tree. I don't see anything that is particularly new or groundbreaking, but there is a skill tree, and it looks like you use anomaly points to access new skills. Anyone who's played RPGs within the past 20 years would be familiar with a system like this, so that's not anything particularly groundbreaking. So we will skip ahead to a little bit later in the video here. You can have a look at these. It looks like you're able to purchase these and teach your Digimon new attacks or new battle actions, which is really nice to have the option to customize your party members just off the get-go like that. That's what I really enjoy in monster raising games, is just teaching new abilities. There's some fun details here that I really like. I think many of you might not be old enough to have had a bunch of CDs, but in the 90s we would stockpile CDs and we would just build decorations out of them. I've had friends that would just thumbtack CDs to walls. So it's fun to have the CDs dangling from the ceiling. Let me know in the comments if you've ever done this with CDs. If you're a bit young, you wouldn't know that. Sometimes we would just get these in the mail. They would be a trial for internet service providers. Hilarious that we would just have dozens of them. I really like these old vintage computers. There's a vintage computer here, a monitor there. I just love these kind of details that, despite the fact that this is this advanced tech, you can see the old keyboard there. Looks like something out of the 90s. Really neat. Which is, of course, where Digimon originates from, the 90s. Ooh, there's some fun little details here. Don't know what those are, but they look a little tasty to me. Fantastic. Something I really like here, I want to comment on just the liveliness, the amount of detail that we see in the streets, but there's a stack of Punimon here. There's 3 of them, all just having a great day. They're, I don't know what's going on here, but these scenes are built with a sense of liveliness, that it feels like these characters are all have their own lives that they are living, and they're not just there to be set dressing. We've seen other monster raising game franchises where NPCs just stand around, creatures just stand around, and the scenes are not composed in a way that conveys a sense of a lived-in world. It is clear that these are just game assets that are there as set dressing to give the player something to look at. Something I really like are item pickups. They appear as contextual objects that exist within the world, not just a little sparkle on the ground, not just a little ball on the ground, but they look like they are objects that exist in the world. And something like that really enhances the immersion, and it's what allows you to feel like you are exploring this world that could exist. I really enjoy that. I think those are soda cans in the barrels. I think they're using the barrels incorrectly. You put the liquid in the barrel. And this scene, I just love the way indoor scenes are composed here. I just want to explain the visual elements here and the thought, the effort that goes into these scenes here. In other monster raising games, indoor scenes are just thrown together. There is no understanding of composition, of scene building, of any sort of cinematic or visual communication, unlike this game, where every indoor scene I've seen is built with considerable consideration from a photographic standpoint. Here we have strong understanding of the use of light and their own lighting system. With volumetric lighting, you can convey a sense of density in the air. You have light coming from this lamp here. You have light streaming in from this fan, and the fan is animated, so there's a sense of life and movement in the world as those light shafts stream in through the side there. We have light coming in here from the right, and we have a balance of the brightest light sources. Here's the harshest light here and here, and it just sort of evens out as it brings your eyes into focus here. They lead the viewer into looking at what is probably the most important thing, which is this right here. We have a stack of televisions here, all piled up in an organic manner that makes it feel like someone lives here and just put those things together. We have the furniture here that is not just straight up against the wall, but off at an angle. It breaks the visual line, which is a visual design philosophy I refer to as breaking the line, and you can see they follow that through here as furniture. It's not straight up against the wall, it's off at an angle, gives it an organic feeling. The table is crooked, the box is off center. You have a little Digimon hiding in the box there. Something they really understand here is a use of color. For example, the light source is a warm color, which tends to be yellow. Red's very warm, but we have 2 different color temperatures for light coming in. We have a warm color and a cold color here, and it builds this dynamic visual contrast that's very pleasing to look at. Now, this yellow square, there's no reason for it to be there that we know of. They could have left these out, but by putting it there, it tells me as an artist that whoever's composing these scenes, is building them, has a very strong understanding of visual communication and building a scene and framing a shot. Because if that were missing, this side of this scene here would be extremely dull. If this green was missing, it would be extremely dull. Whoever built this understands that the most prominent and strongest colors in the scene are yellow and green to balance out the gray and the dullness here. We have yellow light coming in from here and here, and on the opposite side of the scene we have yellow here to offer balance that and to bring visual cohesion, to bring everything in. So it frames it in this yellow light and they direct you downwards towards the center of the scene. It's not pulling your focus away from the scene. And we have green up top to balance out the plant here and the green TVs here. So you can see we have green used in areas that sort of form an X here if we follow the line of that green here, and the yellow brings us all together to this spot. This scene, ooh, this is masterfully composed, absolutely brilliant. I don't know who is specifically in charge of scene building, but every indoor scene I have seen from this game, I have a feeling whoever is building these scenes probably has spent time doing photography or enjoys photography as an interest, because this sort of scene building requires a strong understanding of visual communication, of texture and color, and the design philosophy of breaking the line. Now, if we have a look at 435 here, let's go ahead and as we leave that beautifully composed room, we have something here that is extremely important, that it's a vital concept to understand, and I don't see anyone discuss this topic. So if you're an artist, if you're into game development, this is something that you really should understand. This is implied detail and concept permanence. These are two concepts. What we see here is implied detail, and these developers, these artists, are combining that with concept permanence. Concept permanence is a design philosophy where we introduce a concept to the viewer, to the player, to the reader, to the user, and we rely on the audience understanding this concept exists and it will remain permanent even if you no longer see that concept visible in the work. So we just came from a room where we see a very dense amount of detail. We have shown the player, we've shown the viewer, look how visually dense, look how detail dense this world is. So we are relying on them understanding that concept, and understanding the concept is permanent. Now we have implied detail. These rooms here are conveyed in a way that says these are dwellings, these are residences, these are rooms that are just like the one that you went into, that you just explored, and it is combining implied detail with concept permanence. They are implying that these are also rooms, even though they are not. These are not actually rooms. This is set dressing. There's nothing in here. These are just simple models that are less detailed, but they are conveyed in a way that implies that there is more detail than there actually is, and it combines that with concept permanence to say, these have detail, all of these have just as much detail as the room that you were just in, as the building you were just in. It's extremely well executed here, and it's so convincing. I had watched this a couple times before I even noticed this, because it is done so well. The exact opposite of this is, and I don't want to be negative, I'm not here to speak negatively about games, but it is important to discuss these things from a perspective that is educational to help you understand. And a very strong opposite to this is Pokemon Sword and Shield. And that game, let me drop my professional presentation here. Sword and Shield makes me so angry. That game pisses me off. I'm speaking as a gamer for a moment. That game pisses me the F off, and I'm going to watch my language, but you go into a town, you go into a building, and it is the exact same room as every single building that you go into in a town in Pokemon Shield. You go from one house to another house to another house. It is the exact same room with the exact same furniture, the exact same framing. Everything is exactly the same. The only difference is there's a different NPC that says something utterly insipid and useless. And when you see that, when you leave that, it's not even visually dense or interesting. It is generic and cheap. And you see every single house is like that. But then you see barely any houses, barely any buildings are enterable in Sword and Shield. And so that builds a sense of There's nothing in there. There is nothing in these buildings. These are not actually lived in spaces. These are cheap, easy copy and pasted, and there's nothing in there. And instead of building a sense of immersion and storytelling through organic means, through visual communication, it builds a sense of these developers do not know what they are doing, and it is cheap and lazy, and it pisses me off. There's my rant. Again, I don't want to be a negative Nancy here, but Pokemon Sword and Shield make me so angry. Because again, I'm not saying that as ooh, let's hate it. I'm saying it because that's the highest grossing game franchise in the world. They have all of the budget in the world, and that is what they produce. You're telling me that if they have all the resources in the world, that's what they produce? And then I look at a game like this, and this is the exact opposite of a cheap. I gotta be professional here. This is the exact opposite of lazy. It's the exact opposite of cheap. In Sword and Shield, it tells me whoever's building those scenes, the rooms, they do not understand anything about implied detail, concept permanence. They do not have a higher level of understanding, a deeper level of understanding when it comes to communication and storytelling. It is frustrating, and Sword and Shield make me angry. I gotta let it go, man. Just it makes me angry as a professional. I'm just saying that, not just as a gamer, but as a professional. It makes me angry that they have all the resources in the world. I think I did not mean to rant. It just came out. Let me just. So this here, Andromon. We see Andromon. What is happening here is he has a text message on his phone, but before he left the house, he had the screen brightness turned all the way down. And then before he left the house, he didn't turn the screen brightness back up. So he's trying to check a text message on his phone, but he's outdoors and he can't see it. His phone's way too dark. The sun's too bright. And so what he's doing is he's trying to find a dark spot so he can get to the menu to turn the screen brightness up on his phone here. There's this is just a neat little trick here. So when you are creating an environment for a game, one of the most frustrating and difficult things is creating the background to an outdoors environment, because you cannot just create the foreground, you cannot just create the immediate environment, you must also create the background environment, and it has to be convincing, and it takes a significant amount of time. And what they've done here is a little design philosophy I refer to as a sky island. This is something that Skylanders does. But when you have a sky island, you can basically just put nothing in the background. Put a little bit of fog, some ocean, some clouds, and you have saved yourself hundreds of hours of time by not having to create background details. It saves a huge amount of time as a developer. And if there's an in-lore reason for it, players will not mind. They've saved themselves a significant amount of time with this sky island approach here. So I really like that. Okay, we'll take a look at right here, and I just really enjoy the quick descent animation for the ladder. I really like that, and there's a very clever trick here that I really appreciate here. So let's have a look at this. The character jumps up and starts writing Garurumon, and what I've noticed as a developer here is that the character is not actually jumping up onto Garurumon. What is actually happening is the character is just using a generic universal jump animation and then a fade to transparency animation. You'll see the character jump and then just fade out and be invisible. And that means that the animators do not have to create unique animations for actually going on each specific Digimon. There's going to be a bunch of different ride Digimon, and it's a huge amount of work having to create unique animations for the characters to actually jump and then climb atop their Digimon to ride. So this saves them an immense amount of work, and it does not have a negative impact on the overall experience or presentation. This is a creative and clever solution. So you'll see the character jump up, just fade and disappear, and then when the character fades back in, they are already on Garurumon. This means that this character this game asset does not actually need to be the actual player character. I would say the playable character still exists, but is now just visually and in terms of logic visually disabled, and this is just a different game object altogether, which means this game object does not need to have the same animation logic as the player character. The more I think about it, this is a brilliant solution to a logical problem that has to be solved, because if they did not do this, it would be a massive amount of work, and I'm already thinking about how irritating that would have to be. You'd have to make it like a Grand Theft Auto degree of animation system, and that takes a huge amount of time, and it introduces logistical issues. The way they've done this is just, that is a creative solution. These developers really impress me. Okay, we're just going to cover a couple more things here. And something I've noticed is the lack of screen space ambient occlusion. So what that is a post-processing effect where after the scene is rendered, there's another effect rendered on top that checks where geometry is intersecting with other geometry, and it sort of adds a darkening shadow. You will see it in games everywhere. It's extremely common. Why developers do that is it adds a sense of realism, but it adds a sense of depth to the environment because it adds shadows to the scene. So what it effectively does is it introduces more contrast by adding darker areas. Inexperienced, and I don't want to be mean here, but incompetent developers will rely on screen space ambient occlusion to make their scenes look good because they don't understand how to make a scene look good on their own merit. They don't know how to compose a scene to make it look interesting. They don't know how to do it, so they just rely on visual effects like bloom, depth of field, and screen space ambient occlusion to make it look interesting by artificially introducing contrast after the fact. Incompetent developers have to rely on that because they do not know how to build a scene to make it look interesting. These developers absolutely know. I think they're showing off here how good they are, that they do not rely on screen space ambient occlusion. If they did use it, you would see a shadow here on the boxes where the boxes are close to the ground. You see a dark blackness here that doesn't really blend in. I say really, it doesn't blend in at all with the real-time shadows. You would see dark shadows here and here and here. And the fact that they do not rely on screen space ambient occlusion, to me, is they're just flaunting how good they are. But it is a show of confidence that they do not need that to make their scene look good. Everything that I've seen here, it's composed in such an interesting way. Again, if this was any other game, I guarantee you would see screen space ambient occlusion. You would see dark artificial shadows introduced here, and they don't have it because these scenes look great on their own as it is. Something I've noticed, if we have a look at the Digimon here, there's something interesting. They do not have their outlines being drawn. On this game's visual aesthetic, we have outlines to convey a sense of the matching the anime art style. You see outlines on the Digimon here, but none here when they are a certain distance from the viewing camera. As we get a little bit closer, you'll see that the outlines suddenly appear. Just here, now they have outlines. Now, the reason why the developers have done that is there is a performance cost to rendering outlines. You're basically drawing that geometry a second time in order to have those outlines. And so they have considered the performance costs. So things that are farther from the camera, they do not draw the outlines. You'll see it here. I'm not sure if that's a Koromon over there, but this Digimon does not have their outlines. And as we get a little bit closer, you'll see it does have outlines. Go ahead and watch this video again. Oh, that's not a Koromon, no. Watch the video, the source video linked in the description, and see if you can point out and find for yourself all of those things here. It's possible that at a distance they are being rendered with a simpler shader as well. See, there's no outlines on this one here, and as we get a little bit closer, the outlines. I just think that's very interesting. So this scene, again, I think these developers are showing off how strong their understanding is of how to make a scene visually interesting, not just visually, but in terms of animation. Have a look at the shadows here, and you will see as the light streams in from above, you'll see there's movement there. The fan is casting a shadow. This is not an accident. This is a deliberate choice to make this scene look alive, to make it look interesting and lived in. It's very small details like that that make these environments look absolutely gorgeous. These developers understand the use of lighting and shadows to make a scene interesting. They follow the design philosophy of breaking the line. For example, we have these straight lines here. The most boring visual image is a straight line. And by breaking that visual line with other details, you make it interesting. We have little patches of grass here that not only convey a sense of lived-inness, where there's grass coming up through the cracks in the pavement, but it breaks the visual line. This corrugated iron here breaks that visual line. The way that the flags cast a shadow and they intersect this line here and break those, this is so brilliant. This game is so nice to look at. And again, I am not here to speak negatively, to talk badly about other developers' work, but if you look at a game like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Pokemon Sword and Shield, there is absolutely nothing like this. Especially in Scarlet and Violet, there's zero conveyance of a deeper understanding of visual expression, and I really like Scarlet and Violet, so I'm not here to elicit or promote hatred towards that, because I really enjoy Scarlet and Violet for what it is. I still enjoy just booting the game up and playing it, but there is zero expression of deeper understanding of communication visually, of art, of making something look beautiful. And I think this game is beautiful. Even small details like this that look like there were posters there previously and they've been ripped off the wall and there's just residue left over from the posters or the tape. Things like that are just brilliant. Again, using implied detail, not necessarily having the detail, but implying it is there, is just fantastic, you know? Same with these. If you look through these buildings here, there's nothing in there. That is a flat polygon, a texture. But because we have already been in buildings that are deeply detailed, and this is presented in a way, if you just watch those windows, it's presented in a way that makes it feel like there's something in there. So it is using implied detail to give a sense of a world that is more detailed and more bigger than it actually is, which is the exact opposite of what Sword and Shield does. Go ahead, I challenge you. I challenge you right now. Boot up Sword and Shield, go to a town, pick a random town, go in there, walk around, go into the buildings, and tell me how you feel about that after seeing this gameplay trailer. I implore you and I dare you to do it. Do it. Do it. Lastly, we will take a look at one more small detail here, and it's just very, very minor here, very small. This indoor area, we see some specularity on the walls here. What I really like are small details like this. Is the paint is more shiny and a little bit more specular than the walls here. It's just small details like that show these developers. This only requires a very basic understanding of materials and textures in a 3D space, but it's more than what we have seen in other game series. And it's small details like that they catching the light just that way just makes it look interesting. Anyway, that's what I wanted to discuss today, and I hope you've enjoyed taking a look at that. I'll just take a couple minutes and share a little bit about my upcoming game that I'm working on. I'll show you a little bit of the character designs, and I won't talk too much about it because this video is about Digimon. But if you would like to learn more about my upcoming game, about monster raising and battling, it's called Goo Buddies. I can make a video and share that with you another day. I'll just share some of the species here. So in this game, you raise monsters on a ranch. You train them to increase their stats individually. And you take on bounties to fight goo baddies. Weekly there are unique battles with Colossus. Those are giant, unique goo buddies that you cannot recruit. You can't raise them yourselves. They're Colossus, they're giant. And they are massive. They're very difficult. You get to see what their strengths and weaknesses and special conditions are, and you basically have to try to build up a team within that week to defeat that specific Colossus. And as a reward, you get very rare, very powerful items that allow you to teach your goo buddies very useful actions, or you can even teach them new passive skills that will make them even more powerful, so you can take on increasingly better missions. And I'll be creating a PvP mode as well, so you'll be able to fight other players. So you're basically just trying to create the best ultimate team you can out of your goo buddies. And that's what I'm working on currently. Thanks very much for joining me today. I really appreciate you spending some time and enjoying this video. Let's look forward to this game together. October will be here soon. This will be launching the first week of October. I'm very excited and looking forward to this. Take care of yourselves, everyone. And I hope you're not offended that I spoke a little bit negatively about Pokemon, but I am a huge Pokemon fan. But we have to be honest, we have to be fair, especially when we discuss things from a professional manner. All right, I've enjoyed spending a bit of time with you today. Take care.